LSU position previews for 2019. Next on Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Billy Gomilla on the line from In the Valley Shook. We are breaking down LSU position by position, getting you set for 2019. Please help us build the channel by grabbing the Amazon link in the description section below, and join us for the Voice of College Football community on Patreon, where we have exclusive live streams each and every week, speaking to you directly, and also viewer comments, reacts from me. All right, let's move on to the running back position, where the first thing that strikes me with Nick Brissett taking a 1,000-yard season on to the next level, possibly, if things work out for him, is that between him and the other main running backs, we're looking at very pedestrian numbers. Of course, the offensive line very much plays into that, but the running game wasn't necessarily anything close to what we've seen in the past when it comes to a super dynamic player in the backfield, nor the support from the offensive line.
No, it really wasn't the running game LSU fans have been used to the last couple of years. You just didn't have that same level of talent with going from a Jeremy Hill to a Leonard Fournette to a Darius Geis. Nick Brissett was a good player, a really great kid, and he really maximized all of his talent. But the talent level just wasn't there. He'd had some injuries in his career. He just never had the kind of breakaway speed, and he was kind of in between. He wasn't super. He wasn't small, but he wasn't really big. And Clyde Edwards-Helaire as a backup is a nice change of pace guy. I think a guy who might be able to add a lot more value this year as a receiver, but not really that workhorse running back. Doesn't really have that breakaway speed to really kind of take it to the house. We saw, in the bowl game, he breaks a kick return on the first play, but he gets run down from behind. He had a couple long runs against Georgia, but he couldn't quite take any of them into the end zone. So this year, I think you're going to see more of a youth movement. They've got two very big recruits coming in 5-star running back John Emery, and then 4-star Tyrion Davis-Price, who was just on the cusp of being a 5-star. I think he was rated something like number 6 or something in the country. So they're both big time, and they both provide different kind of looks. Emery's more of a speed guy, a guy who can catch the ball. Ideally, he'll be a player that'll catch some passes out of the backfield, maybe get involved in the screen game, kind of similar to Edwards-Helaire. Davis is much more that classic big back, that 6'1", 230-pound workhorse type, and I would expect that both those guys, whether they're the nominal starters or not, they're going to kind of be the bell cows for this offensive attack going forward. And I expect big things from maybe not from one guy over the other, but from the combination of the two this year.
Yeah, usually when you recruit and sign players of this ilk, if you can get one of them to pull through as a freshman, and the odds say that you probably will, it's not a position that requires a ton of development like some other positions like offensive line. But Emery, as you mentioned, the number 2 rated running back in the nation, according to the 247 composite, and Davis-Price at number 8, both top 7 players in the state of Louisiana. Chris Curry's also a guy that got 8 carries last year, was a pretty highly thought of back as a top 15 back the class before, but it's becoming a bit crowded for him to try to get some playing time.
Yeah, I think that's part of what makes the dynamic interesting is you got Emery and Edwards-Helaire, who are kind of similar in that they're more that space guy, that speed guy, that guy you want to get on the edge. And you got Davis-Price and Curry, who are much more of that pounder type. And, Curry showed some things in the spring, and I'm still a believer that he can find a role for himself as a short yardage guy, as a late game closer, when they just need to rack up some first downs, but not necessarily put a ton of more mileage on the number 1 back's odometer. Curry's a guy I think that can do that, and there's still time for those guys to develop.
Talking LSU football, we go to Billy Gomilla from In the Valley Shook. You can catch him right there on SB Nation, breaking down LSU athletics across the board with the rest of himself and the staff. And, of course, football is coming up very soon. We're at SEC, the conference coaches getting together in Destin, Florida later this week. And, of course, media days will be here before you know it. Let's look at the offensive line, Billy. Obviously, that ties into the running game. Our previous video released, the running woes. I'm looking at a yards per carry average that was the worst for LSU since going back to 2012.